Hi guys, in today's video we are going to discuss about React components and let's get started. So components are basically one independent reusable pieces of the UI. Okay. So the components will help you split the entire user interface into independent and reusable pieces. So to understand this, let's have a look at a sample UI. If you seen my introduction to React video, you remember this screen. Okay. So this entire UI is divided into multiple components like header components, navbar component, contents, and footer. So suppose we are just going to add a form. So this form will have like 5 input fields and a submit button. If I will create all these form elements as individual isolated components, I can use this block right here to to create another form. So suppose this is a register form, I want to create a login form as well. In somewhere in this content or in another page, I can just reuse all these building blocks of this form into another form. I don't have to write that logic again. Okay, so this is how the component work. Okay, so to know what components are, let's go to VS Code and start implementing. So in VS Code, I have my app component, and let's put the output folder right here, maybe in here. Okay, so with your output is here, let's say it's working. Yeah, so it's working now. So there are basically two types of uh, components. Okay, so let's go for them now. So components are of two types, like functional and class-based components. Okay, so the functional component is just like a JavaScript function. That's why the name, the functional component. So it just as a plain JavaScript function that will take some input parameters, for this case the props, and will return on JSX element. If you've seen my JSX video, then you understand what this is. So for the simplicity of this video, we say that a functional component will just return an HTML element. The class-based components are the classes of ES6, uh, ES6 class syntax X. So in here, we will have a render method that is compulsory to return the same HTML element that is rendered in the functional component. So to create this class-based component, we have to extend the React.component class. So if you know about the class and object concept, you understand that this is how this is done. Okay. So on now with the concept, let's go back to our VS Code and our output. Okay. So I will create two types of components in here, and I'll render them both in the app component. So for this, we'll create a folder called components. Okay. And inside here, we'll create a symbol.js file. So suppose functional. Okay, functional.js. Here with emit abbreviation, or you can just type it out, a RFCE, a React functional component with export. So let me go through this entire code and I'll let you know what is happening. So this is basically a functional component that will return an div. Okay, so for this you can high functional component. Okay, so now we'll import this into our app function. So inside div, we'll say the functional component, and I have the auto import extension in VS Code. So for that, he is importing automatically the functional component from .components.functional. Else you can just write it import functional from components functional. Okay, so if we'll save this, it will throw like hi functional component, whatever we wrote here. So I mentioned that there is another way to declare a component, that is a class-based component. So to do that, we'll create another file, that class based, okay, .js. So for this, we'll go for class component with export. Okay, so this is a class-based component, and that will extend the component method from React and a render method to render this UI element with a return. So this is, suppose to make it unique, I will make an S tag. So suppose an S tag h1, and inside that class based. Okay, class based example. Okay, so we declared this class based component. Now our job is to import this one inside our app component. So for that, we can just class based, this will be auto imported. Okay, just put me in the comment if you have any problem with like all this auto import extension, or I will help you out. So we can render all this. Now both a functional component and class based component is imported. Okay, so for now, what we have learned, that functional components is just an JavaScript functions, and class based components are an just an class with a from extends React component with a render and return. So what we have covered in this video, that components let you split the UI into independent reusable pieces. Okay, and think about all these pieces is in isolation, means you can do independent operations on it. So we can do much more with the prop types and the state, which I will describe in the upcoming videos. Conceptually, components are like JavaScript function. So if you know plain JavaScript, so you can resemble them in a JavaScript function, and we always write them into a .js file. And there is a .jsx syntax also to name the files. We will get to that later. So there are two types of components. One is functional component and one is class-based components. So in next video, I will explain about props. So just stay tuned for the next video, and I will put all these codes in GitHub, and I'll put a link in the description. So thank you guys. I'll see you in next one.